here. No, he doesn't look it, but he's been here quite a while. And no, that's all right. He can remember fitting this Stratford pedal board into the console back in 1991. But it's had 3 years of very heavy use. And you might be able to see, if you look carefully, the pedals have got a bit of a divot in them. Because, you know, imagine it's shoes, it's a gritty, dirty environment. This is arranged like a keyboard with sharps and flats. So the organist plays a tune with their feet. But these are typically the bass pipes, the pipes you feel that give the foundation under the organ. And so Mike has just got started on this pedal board to restore this to good condition. The things that Mike has to do is to reprofile these keys, which involves, if they're only very lightly worn, just reprofiling them. But when they're really as badly worn as this, what we often do is cut a section out and put new pieces of timber in to return the original profile. You can see how worn away some of the sharps are, so these will need recapped, as well as a thorough cleaning. The other thing that needs to be done is to get rid of lots of sideways play, because as the pedal board is played thousands and thousands of times, the pedals, you can, I mean, obviously it's not connected at the moment, but even when it was, you shouldn't be able to wiggle them, but you could on the Stratford one. Yes, you could pass it. That's a. Yeah, if you pass it, you can all see the wear on that. It doesn't stop it working, but I mean, I've played on some organs where this has not been dealt with, and if you think of, you see, this is all arranged in sharps and flats. I remember the organ I learnt on as a teenager. It was so worn that when you pressed one of these pedals down, you ended up pressing one of these down as well, because there was so little timber left on them. In discussion with Douglas, the diocesan organ advisor Nigel Olcote, there's 1 or 2 adjustments that we're making. I don't mean we're replacing pipes, but some of them were softening slightly, some of them were loudening slightly. And when we get through to the pipe department and we see the Stratford pipes, James can talk about that. Because I always think it's amazing how he can translate the sound of the pipes from a small room into how they're going to sound halfway down a long church.
Wow.
But we'll get to that. We'll see some Stratford pipes. This is our metal shop. This is where we make and where we restore metal pipes. People are always astounded at how many pipes are in an organ. So many people think that the only pipes in the instrument are the ones in the facade, and that's just a fraction. And they're of course some of the larger ones, but I don't know the exact number, but if I was guessing the total number of pipes in the Stratford organ, I would guess in the region of 2,500 to 3,000. And here are some of them. We mentioned earlier on that the Stratford organ is really a collation, hopefully in an artistic way, of pipes from different builders in different periods that have all been brought into the organ at different times with evolving musical needs and evolving musical tastes, and blended together as one instrument. So why have we got them all out and brought them here? Well, primarily to clean them, because after 30 odd years they got quite dusty, and that doesn't. It's not just a question of how they look, it's how they sound, because particularly the smaller pipes, that can really choke up the mouths and dull their speech. You should hear a distinct difference to the sound of the organ once these go back. It should sound cleaner and brighter and more vivid. Most organ pipes have got no moving parts. They're just like a giant penny whistle or a recorder. And if I hold up this example here, the wind comes in the bottom through this small hole at the bottom, which we call the tip hole, and it's all turbulent in here, and then when it reaches this part, it actually hits a flat plate. Not many people realise that there's a horizontal plate inside these pipes, but it doesn't completely cap the pipe. there's a small gap left here, which we call the flue. And so all this turbulent air is turned into a rectangular sheet of wind. And that is directed upwards to hit the upper lip of the pipe. Everybody with me so far? Yeah. And when it hits the upper lip of the pipe, a bit like blowing across the top of a beer bottle, it sets the air in the column of air in there in vibration. And that's what creates the sound. And all the organ pipes are voiced for a particular pressure. So if you blow them harder, doesn't like it. And if I blow it more gently, it's not really speaking properly. And making sure the organ pipes are speaking properly is the job of our voicers, which we will see in a moment. But in here, the job that the guys in here have got to do is to clean all the pipes. We have a large bath for that. Get all the dirt and dust off, not just the outside, but all the inside. They're often blasted with compressed air. And one or two of them have had some dents and dings, or sometimes we find that pipes start to collapse a little. They're quite soft. I could easily do that over my knee. I won't, but it would require little more effort than doing that to a drinks can. You know, they're not actually that strong and solid.
Is it lead?
Lead and tin.
Lead and tin, yes. The more lead you have, the warmer, a bit duller the sound, and the more tin you have, the brighter, a bit colder the sound. So quite often organ builders have used a compromise of half and half. And a very interesting side effect then is when the molten metal is cooling, when it's about half and half in composition, the lead and tin try to separate. And you get this lovely mottled appearance, which we call spotted metal. And actually we make most of our new pipes now out of spotted metal. And it has the perfect balance really between warmth and clarity in the sound. But older organ builders used to like much more lead-rich sound, and that's why most of these pipes you can see here are predominantly lead in construction. Now, how do we tune an organ pipe? The longer the pipe, the lower the note, and the shorter the pipe, the higher the note. And so the way we tune them is to make them ever so slightly short, and then we fit this collar on the top, which can be tapped up and down. So when the tuner is in the organ, you hear this kind of metallic, and that's the tuner tapping these slides up and down, effectively changing ever so slightly the length of the pipe. Now, these tuning slides back in 1991 were in good condition, or I should say the former tuning slides. But by the time that we took the organ pipes out a month ago, they'd become quite corroded. And so these are all brand new slides that these guys have put on in the last few days and weeks onto the Stratford pipes. So they will be much, this doesn't affect the sound at all, but it makes them much easier to tune. It's clamping hard, but not too hard. And when they corrode, what we find is that you tap them and they won't move. And then you tap them a bit harder, and then particularly if it's a small pipe, the whole pipe comes flying out. It's no use. So yes, these are all Stratford pipes. One or two things of interest. You notice that these pipes here have got a hole drilled in them halfway up. And these are what we call harmonic pipes. So if you drill a hole halfway up a pipe, it speaks an octave higher. So if an organ pipe is brand new, when the guys in here have finished it, it looks like an organ pipe, but it doesn't speak properly. It has to be given its sound, which we call voicing. But this pipe has a voice. It's just lost it temporarily. And so it has to be regulated and bring it back to how it should be. And also as part of that are potentially some slight adjustments, because let's say, for example, we've got all these pipes now speaking properly. We might find that this one is just a little louder than all its neighbours. Or this one's a bit quieter. Or this one's just got a slightly funny quality to the sound in comparison to, and all that of evening that out is a real specialist job that we do next door. When a pipe is very narrow, it speaks with quite a nasal, tight sound, and then as you broaden it out to something like these, they speak with a kind of classic, what we call the diapason or principal sound, and as you make that wider still, it becomes a bit fluty, so that's why we have organ pipes of different lengths and of different scale, so that the organist can marry lots of different colours, different pitches and different timbres, selecting from the draw stops in the console.
So I'm almost embarrassed to ask the next question. Why do you have 3,000 pipes?
Why not? To get each family of pipes that you have, we call it a stop, and there are 61 pipes usually for that, one for each note of the keyboard. Yeah. Because this can only speak at one pitch. You can't. It's not like a violin where you can change it and make it sound different, or a human voice. It can only speak one note and one volume and one timbre. And so if you then want another family of pipes to add to that, to give a chorus to that, that's another 61 pipes. And so on and so on and so on. And the way an organ is constructed is that not all the pipes are at the same pitch. You have pipes that speak an octave lower, or an octave higher above that. And you even have some pipes that speak at the intervals in between. And that's why the sound of an organ is so rich, because you have these hundreds of pipes speaking. So next time that Douglas is playing for a hymn, at any point during that hymn, there are probably at least 100 pipes sounding at one time, of different sizes and pitches. And that's what gives it that breadth and richness.
It's interesting to be in here because I can talk to you about the different styles of organ building in terms of the pipes. And so we've got two sort of general sort of nomenclatures for pipes: flue pipes and reed pipes. So the flue is this little sliver of opening here, and we call this the mouth, this whole area. So this is the top lip, the bottom lip, these are the ears. This whole area is called the mouth. And the wind comes in through the bottom of the pipe, and it comes through this little gap here, and that's called a flue, and that's why they're called flue pipes. It's nothing to do with actually this part. This is the resonator, and depending on what I do with this particular area of the pipe will depend on the sort of sound that it makes. So this is called a cut up. If I raise that cut up, this sound will become a lot more fluty. As it is now, it's what's called a principal, but it's a bit of a bashed one. So I'll just sort of set the mouth and the flue, and then if I give it a blow, that's what we call a diapason sound. It's a sort of standard sound on an organ. So if you looked at the stops on an organ, you'll see an oboe, trumpet, clarinet, which is what this is here, a flute, and then you'll see something called a diapason, which is it's actually a Greek word, and it means through the whole compass. And the diapason is the standard sound of an organ. That doesn't sound like a flute, it doesn't sound like an orchestral instrument. And if I raised this cut up here, it would start to lose its edge, and it would start to become, if I actually open the tip hole up, which I can do as well, do this, it will then get louder. But it's not to do with the pressure of wind, it's to do with the volume of wind that's going through this flue here. All of a sudden that's a much brighter sound. I'm not blowing it any harder. If I really blow it, it'll start to sort of overblow. But if I cut this up, I can overblow it, and the sound becomes less energetic and becomes a bit more rounded. And the further I go with that, I can make that sound like a flute pipe, a little, a bit more like a sort of an orchestral flute. Now the reed pipes that we've got here work on a completely different principle. If I play some notes, and that sounds a little bit like an orchestral clarinet, which is the idea. But the way these are put together is we have a little brass tongue here, which you might be able to see. This is called the reed, and these are why these are called reed pipes. And the I've got one here. So various components. You've got a shallot here, and the reed, as you can see there, sits against this shallot, and then the wind comes in through the boot, like so. The wind can't go anywhere else except up this way, and so this causes a vibration of this tongue, and then this vibrates against the shallot. The wind comes in through there, and this is what determines the sound of the pipe, along with the way that the pipe is constructed with this sort of conical resonator, but also determines how far back this is tuned, the sort of sound we're going to get out of it. So if it's tuned a bit further back, it'll make a broader sound, a sort of brighter sound. Further down I go with that, it sort of covers the tone, and I'll demonstrate that to you in a sec. Let's put one on there. I'll do this. So if I move this little spring here, the tone will change, as well as the pitch starts going off speech. Now I could correct that by opening the top, which is now speaking a completely different note. So if I want to get that back where it originally was, I'll bring this back up, put that about where it was before. That brings it back into line. So when you go into a church and hear an organ being tuned, generally it'll be the reed pipe that you can hear, and you'll hear that sort of kind of sort of sound going, and that'll be the tuner knocking these tuning springs up and down. So that's a little bit about the reed pipes. If we go next door, I can show you about the flue pipes. We've actually got some pipes from the Stratford organ on the machine next door. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. So this is the principal. And then we've got what's called a 15th, which is an octave higher than that, which gives a nice kind of bright sound to it. And the reason that it's called, that we say 4 foot or 8 foot or 2 foot, is because the longest pipe, speaking from the mouth to the top, is 4 feet in length. So when you see an organ stop, it'll say 16 or 8 or 4 or 2, and you know that means that the bottom note is 2 feet in length or 8 feet in length, 4 feet in length, and that kind of stuff. So, but this is interesting because the organ was worked on by our predecessors many years ago, and there was a trend at that time to make organs sound a little bit more like the organs that were being built on the continent, and there was a lot of continental influences coming through in the country. Now, my predecessor, bar one, was called Dennis Thurlow. He's a very famous English organ voicer, and he worked with a company called Walker's. And during this period between the 50s and 70s, 80s, Walker's were the kind of the pioneers in creating this new kind of continental sound where everything was a lot brighter and like clean lines, because they wanted to play Bach and Buxtehude and continental music. And English organs were not really designed for that. They were designed for hymnody and for accompanying choirs. And so some of the pipes were altered in that period, where when the organ was done in the 80s by ourselves, not by us of course, or by our company. And what I've been doing is trying to get back some of that warmth. And oh, well done. That's all right. We're trying to get some of that warmth back into the sound, to take it closer to the sort of Victorian sound that the organ would have had when it first went in. You know, within the stop list of the Stratford organ are several sounds that actually are not terribly in keeping with all the other sounds on the organ. So what my job is really is to sort of kind of bring everything back into line, so it doesn't sound like two different organs, one at the top, one at the bottom. Actually, they all speak with the same language, and all I've been doing is sort of it's again how I alter the mouth here and the tip holes, and Dennis had this sort of phrase, make it as loud as you can. So and everything was just shouting its head off, and so I kind of just brought it all down into line. So actually the pipes are speaking with a sort of a more kind of relaxed tone, which is got a lot more warmth to it. It's not as loud as it was before, but actually that warmth will carry into the church in a way that it didn't before, because the pipes were working too hard. And so that's the process that I've been going through. This is the second rank that I'm on, and the guys next door have finished some more. So over the course of the next sort of 2-3 weeks, I'll go through every single pipe in the part of the organ that we've taken out and bring this kind of warmth and Victorian character back into the organ, so it kind of fits. It's fitting for the church, it's fitting for the case. It's important that the organ case reflects the sound that's coming out of it. And when we're designing organs, it's the same way. In the same way that the console has to reflect the kind of quality of the sound you're going to get when you sit at that. So there you go. That's what I've been doing over here with your organ. But everything else is done by ear. Once I've set a middle C, I never use a tuning machine. It's all done by ear. But I've been doing it for nearly 30 years now. So
you can imagine that the keyboards, all three of them, have had similar wear and tear. And as well as being our electrical guru, Wesley here and his assistant Gary, they also work on keyboards. And so Wesley's going to say a little bit about what we're doing to the Stratford keyboards, one of which is behind you here, which has been worked on.
On the bottom of them they have this, what we call a wiper, metal wiper, and then it comes down, when you press the key it pivots at the back, and then this wiper comes down onto 4 fine silver wires in the bottom of here, and each one then feeds the signal off to the electrical system. But we're not touching them this time because they were done
91.
A fair time ago, but they're still good condition. But what we are doing is we're going to clean them up, clean the surface of the, I'm not sure if it's ivory or bone, that will look whiter again when it's finished. And then the other thing we're doing is this bushing in here. It's a little bit of red cloth in that slot that slides up and down on a pin at the front called a bat pin. It's shaped, and I guess it's like a cricket bat, so you can, if you get side to side movement in it as it wears over the years, you can rotate the bat pin by sticking a tool in there to catch the bottom of it, just adjust it, and effectively it makes it wider and it stops the side play of the keys. But all the bat pins will be adjusted anyway, but not only that, we're replacing the red bushing cloth, which is quite a long time-consuming task, because they will have to be stripped out and glued in. When you strip them out, you've got to be careful not to take any of the wood off, because it's you don't want too much play in there, or you don't want to take some off one side but not the other, because then the key won't be central. Yeah, that's what.
Does that make
The other thing is that if we don't do this now and we leave it another 30 years, the wear in the keys will become so bad that not only does the felt wear away, but the wood wears away. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a much more expensive and difficult job to sort that at that stage. So it's partly tidying up and it's partly preemptive maintenance as well.
There is something which could affect not the sound, but the point at which it plays a note, which is you can use the screw in the top of the key here to move this wiper here. Which determines the point at which it makes contact with the wires. So when we've cleaned up the keys and put them all back in again, I will go through them and make sure that every key comes on, as in plays the note when it goes down by a certain amount, and various other things, the overall movement of the keys, and also the weight that's required to press the key. So I put a metal weight on each one, and then adjust the spring if necessary to make sure that it's the right weight.